So this episode is what is the point of money? The point of money up until this point in my life has been a means of exchange. Goods and services, some people might call it. And the fascinating thing about money, or at least my experience with money, is that you and I get to decide the point of money. I can tell you the story and the history about where money came from and this and that about paper and how it comes from the mint and all these good things, but you probably have your own way of looking at that. What I realize right now is that you're tuned in to have me talk about money. And so me telling you what the point of money is actually the same point as me saying money is the same thing that you tell yourself what you are. I'm 24, and up until this point in my life, I had largely regarded money to be as this semi pseudo concept. It's not that I couldn't wrap my head around it. It's that when I realized that someone's quality of life was dictated by how they used money, it became this really interesting thing about, okay, well, why is it that society uses money the way that they do? Because if you were to objectively look at what money is used for and used as, then you would have an opinion about money, right? Like, you have an opinion about money. But if your opinion about money was also the same opinion you had about yourself, then would you change how you would view money? And the reason I'm wording it that way is because, like I mentioned, I'm 24. And up until this point in my life, the more I've come to accept the way that the world is and the way it moves is also the more I've accepted money. And it's fascinating how that works because, again, I could tell you about this and that about the stories and this and that about where it comes from and all these other things. I could tell you about these things, right? But I could also mention to you that money, in its very simplest form, is an energy, it's a currency. The point of money is it's a tool. Money in itself is, for the world that I live in, and because you're viewing this, the world that you live in, money is a tool in the extent for what you deem it to be. The more useful you can see yourself being with money, the more useful that tool is going to be. And the reason I call it a tool is because when you, for example, want to learn how to, I don't know, edit a photo, right? Photoshop is a tool. You used money to get that tool. Now, some people, they don't know what Photoshop is. Some people don't know how to use a camera. Some people don't know what it means to take a picture. So they don't know what the tool Photoshop really means because they don't know how to take a photo. Maybe they're an accountant and they know how to do spreadsheets and they know how to balance books and they know how to be honest with money. They know that, there's ways to spend money. There's also ways to bring in money. And so for them, they might be more in tune with buying a really good desk chair or a modular desk that moves up and down so that they can stand and sit. So in that regard, their tool of how to best use money might be getting like DoorDash Premium or whatever it is, because for them they might enjoy more, working and doing spreadsheets and stuff like that versus having to go to a grocery store and say, hey, where are the eggs? Or hey, do you have any tortillas? Right? So all this, like, this is the point of money. The point of money is like, oh, I have this idea. I'm gonna go do something with this idea. I heard someone say once that if you got two people in a room together and they had the same IQ, and one of them essentially was the average person, lived an average life, and then the other person, by an objective sense, was not average. The question now becomes, well, if they have the same IQ, then how is it that one person got to jump out of a helicopter? How did one person get to climb Mount Everest? How did one person get to travel to 26 different countries? Whereas the other person, although they might both relatively be the same amount of happiness, the guy could have stayed hypothetically in America, he could have had a farm, had a wife. Those are two different dreams. And where I'm going with this is that the way that someone uses money is also in the same way how they view themselves. If someone is a lot more extroverted and they might be a little bit more adventurous in the sense that they're the be happy go lucky kind of person, versus the other guy who's like, no, 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 I want to secure my land, I want to secure the food I have to eat, I want to secure the water quality that I can drink, and I want to make a life possible for myself so that my wife can be a stay-at-home wife and we can nurture a family and not have to worry about going to grocery stores and waiting in lines and having to go to cities and things like that. Building my own furniture, um, making my own fertilizer, fixing my own machines. Again, two completely different ways of life, two completely different paths to use money. Me, for example, I was at a point where, let's just say, money flowed to me in the sense that because I was consistent and I knew how to use it and I knew what it was going into and what it was offering me, that feeling that it was associated with, it kept flowing. And then as I began to question the motives and I began to, in a literal sense, change why I even associated with money, the renegotiation of the money flowing, I witnessed that. I witnessed money become completely different in my eyes, and it was a totally different world. The world I decided to involve myself in was in a world of helping and of giving, and in the same way that people treated me differently was also in the same way that I treated myself differently. Was also in the same way that I started to see money flow to me differently. Was also in the same way that I started to use money differently. And so again, for me, money is a tool. Money is a tool in the sense that the respect you have for yourself and what you choose to use money for. And again, this isn't for me to sit here and be like, I'm using money the right way and everyone else is using it in the non-right way. What I'm saying is that everyone has their own justification and their own means to have money. That's the reason why money is a tool. I mean, look at a hammer, for example. You use a hammer. How often do you use a hammer? Are you using a hammer right now? The point there is that when you need that tool, you know where to find it and you know what it looks like and you know how to use it. It's as simple as that. And so this also then implies the whole detachment thing in the sense that It's not like, for example, in what's that? Maybe it's the Batman. One of the Batman movies where the Joker basically gets a bunch of gas and then lights the money on fire. It's not what you're looking at in the respect of like, wow, this is just a bunch of money. What are you gonna do with a bunch of green paper? It's what you see and what you feel about what you're seeing in the respect of like, oh wow, I really do see that money right there. It could go to be building this business, and it could go as far as, oh wow, you know what? I could actually build a distribution company that is also distributing the flowers that I grow, or wow, that money that I have, it can actually, instead of renting these trucks for my employees, I can actually put an entire lot of cars that I bought for my employees, and I could pay them to be trained so that when they go and they do the job, they're doing it the best way that they can. And additionally, on top of that, these employees are also, guess what? They have uniforms, and I can buy my employees uniforms. See, that's money. That's the tool. And so when you see money as an opportunity in the sense that you can appreciate yourself first off, in the sense of like, okay, and this is really what the tool is about, is you have money, right? And the money you have is meant to cover your basic needs, your food, your water, your clothes, your shelter, your medicine, your healthcare, safety, all those basic things. Once you have your needs met, whatever you have that's left over is then at that point like, oh, I can actually use this money to buy a new computer, and I can go get a new phone, and then from there I have a brand new business that I have the opportunity of having, and then from me putting my money, my tool to use, I then have more and more tools to have in use, because then I could buy ND filters and microphones, and I can have a employees, or you can go and use that money, that tool for gas, and then I can put that tool to use by having another tool, which is a car that you got by the means of exchanging tools, and then you can go to these locations and do all these drives and these um these events, and you can pay other people for the craft and the work that they do, and say, hey, I really love how you um, create these flyers or do these logos. I know I could do my own, but I want to see how you do it, how you can influence um, this market. So then you use that tool and you then give it to these people, and it's like this giant game of giving. Not really a game. I wouldn't necessarily call it a game, actually, because in a game, that implies that there's a winner and a loser, and someone who's embarrassed, and someone who comes away with pride. So it's not a game, but it is a system. It is a procedure, and based on how you view your life, positively, neutral, negatively, is life against you? Is life happening for you? Or are you just not aware of anything that I'm saying? Then at that point, it becomes this whole thing about it becomes this whole thing about, are people so this is going to be a literal and visual documentation of my questions before I read three books. I know what this is about now.
So here's where we're at. So this
I'm just putting my tools to use so that you can have tools to have. It's magnificent how this whole tool situation is working. So there's one. And again, you're watching this because you want to know about tools, right? So the main moral, maybe not moral per se, but the main thing we'll just say that I could say about money is that the point of money is it's really no different than a literal tree that I'm looking at right now. Looking at a palm tree, I'm looking at another palm tree, and there's a whole bunch of other trees that I could be looking at. And I really don't know the name of them, if I'm being quite frank with you. But what I do know is that they're green, they have a trunk, and there's branches involved. I know that the sun shines on them, they grow bigger. I know that the water feeds them and they get stronger. I also know that those same exact principles I just said are the same exact principles of how people can either grow money or don't grow money. It's as simple as that. The optimism that you have as an individual about your own life just so happens to be the same kind of optimism that shows up when, oh wow, look, more tools. Oh wow, look at that. I know exactly the right way to use these tools. Or I know that these tools are going to be used and put to the best possible purpose. And I will also say this. Getting to this point is a unique point because I've also done some interpersonal research in the respect of like, okay, there's a whole bunch of ways that I could be here and be like, okay, I'm gonna cross reference and cross judge the way I use money with how other people use money. And I could get into the whole thing about the notion that there's people who have money, who have made money, and are asking other people how they should use their own money. I could get into all that, but I'm not going to, because what I'm talking about right now is what I know money to be and what I see the point of money being. And the common theme of what I've been saying in this video is that money is a tool. And I referenced a hammer. And so again, are you using a hammer right now? Because the point is that when you know that you are supposed to be using a hammer to hammer a nail, you know that you are going to use a hammer. Would you use a fork to hammer a nail? So again, when you know this and you understand, like, okay, I see the point of what I would use money for. I see the point of what I would use a hammer for. Is also the same sort of way where you're like, oh wow, you know what? I'm someone that's capable and able to, and this is the part where like there's an X and then you put in however much money you feel like having, because then the guarantee that you'll have that money is already set right there. So then in the regard of, oh yeah, you know, with that amount of money or with that tool, it'd go to X, Y, and Z thing. And then when you realize that, and it's like, I have the tool, I have the hammer, I see all the nails that I get to go take care of. Then that's great. That's the whole point of what the tool is for. Okay. 7.21 gigabytes. Let's see. Let's turn the jet engine on. 2, 3. How do I get to new tab? There we go. Okay. So this episode is called What is the Point of Money? And I recorded this on the 29th of March in 2025. What is the point of business will be the next episode. Take care. All the best.